Shabbat Shalom and welcome everybody, and I'm glad you are here and I'm glad you are there. Stay safe, and we are starting our service. And as it is our custom, we will ask a woman to light the lights.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Anu matakim, Baruch Shabbat Hashem Yeshua HaMashiach. Sar Shalom. Amen. Blessed are you, everybody with me, our Lord, our God, King of the universe. We light these Shabbat lights in the name of Yeshua the Messiah, Prince of Peace, light of the world. Amen. Heavenly Father, bless us with your presence. Enlighten our eyes with your light and your truth, just as we light these Shabbat candles before you, and so make a spirit of trust, love, good in our homes and in community. We praise you for the gift of your Son, Yeshua. He has come to bless the whole world, to be a light to the nations. Amen.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Thank you for those that did join us tonight, and thank you for everybody that are listening to us live streaming. We'd love you to join us on Friday nights, so please consider in a fortnight's time to join us. Wednesday evening 7:30 prayer meetings are continuing, as was the case last week and the weeks before. And again, may I ask if you have the time, we provide you with specific Bible verses that we'd like to pray on, and we would love you to join us. So the next meeting, i.e. Friday today week, will be a recording, and then in a fortnight we'll again go to the live recordings. Thank you for Sri for all the technical help for tonight, and thank you Paul and Zelly for your contributions. Yep, and now we're going to listen.
You want to thank the musicians?
But I'll thank the musicians afterwards. But as you're aware, the musicians are here right behind me and have done a superb job a fortnight ago, and will do the same tonight. Thank you for that. Amen.
It's traditional for us to say the blessing over the children. I was going to do it over Harry.
I'm not unhappy for you to do that.
And so think of your grandchildren, children, nephews, nieces, and have this prayer in mind as you say this prayer. May the Lord make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. May the Lord make you like Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Amen.
Amen.
Well, we're going to ask our worship team at this point to kick it off. So worship team.
Over to you.
Hallelujah, praise the Lord.
Thank you very much, guys. I have an idea. It is you, Paul. Thank you very much, music team.
Saved by the bell.
As you're aware, we, particularly if there's a small group of us meeting here, we still need to tithe so that it's possible for us to make ends meet, and that ends meet means to pay for salary. So we will tithe as a group afterwards, downstairs, thank you. But if you are listening to us and live streaming, please, can you consider using the donate button on the screen and on our webpage? It would be much appreciated. Thank you for everybody that has been tithing through the donate button. It has certainly helped us through this COVID or awkward time, I should perhaps rather say. I just want to add something else. It was year end a couple of days ago, 3 days ago. And I'm happy to say that Celebrate Messiah looks considerably healthier as an organization this year end, which is 3 days ago, than what it looked like last year, i.e. 2019. And the building is almost there. So thank you for everybody that has contributed to that fund and to the building. Thank you, Lord, for allowing us to build the first synagogue, Messianic synagogue in the Southern Hemisphere. Thank you. Over to you, Paul.
Should I say something about tithing? Because I don't believe in tithing.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that today, but some people believe in tithing, some people don't. If you believe in biblical tithing, it's 23.3% of your income. So I would suggest to just give a gift or a donation rather than tithe. But you're welcome to do it. Feel free. Well, having said all that, the Parashah for this week is about my great, etc. grandfather, Pinchas Cohen. Yes, Phineas,
And he tithed.
and he received the tithe. He was the priest. And he's a part of a story that started actually in last week's Parashah on Balaam, and we dealt with Balaam last year. For those of you who remember, Balaam tried to curse the Jewish people, and it was a sad story. He was hired by Balak, the king of Moab, and God said to Balaam, "No, don't go with these people. They want to curse the Jewish people. That's not going to happen." And, he slept a lot and he wanted more money and decided, "Look, it's a good plan, Lord, let me go." And God said, "Fine, but you can go, as long as you say what I put in your mouth." And he chose not to do that, and God had to take over his tongue to make sure that only blessings would come out. And so he realized he was unable to curse the Jewish people. And this is that end of this story that we are now reading. And so really we should have started much earlier in, a couple of chapters ago, but for time's sake, we're not going to do that. But we are going to look at this character. And so while Israel was at Shittim, well, where is that? That's a good question, isn't it? Well, the people involved are the Moabites, that's for sure. And so we know where Moab is. That's that yellow area behind me. You can see it. It's in Jordan, just from the middle of the Dead Sea to the bottom of it. It's above Edom. And it's that region generally. Now, we don't quite know exactly where they stood. There's some dispute over that. But give or take that area. There is one more person mentioned in here by identification, and she is from Midian, Now Midian at this time is on both sides of the Gulf of Eilat, and so it could be in Saudi Arabia, so it could be a bit lower, it could be on the other side, it could be in Sinai, we don't know. So that doesn't really help us. Well, having said that, if you have a Bible, Numbers chapter 25. While Israel remained at Shittim. So they had paused. You see, they had sent out the spies, and the spies came back saying, yeah, it looks pretty good, but we can't do it. You see, we've been 40 years traveling through the desert, and we're kind of comfortable with this. We don't want to fight these people. They just find us a bit of space, a bit of land without fighting. And so there is some uncomfortable tension in the land already. So the people are there, and the people began to play the harlot with the daughters of Moab. This is a group of people, descendants from Lot, where God had said, don't interact with them, don't become involved with them. For they invited the people to the sacrifice of their God, and the people ate and bowed down to their gods. That's a pretty horrific statement, isn't it? Because what is it that they're doing? Well, why don't you come and observe and see what we do? It's kind of interesting. You could make it a study. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. And then that comes that next step. While you're here, you might as well have a meal with us. I know we sacrifice this to the pagan gods, but it's just meat. Don't worry about it. And then comes that third step, what they did in pagan tradition. And we'll come to that in a bit more detail. The god that they worshipped is the Baal of Peor. Now, Baal just means master, and Peor is the place. And we see that a number of times where the Baal is mentioned. And so Balaam, who had come up to curse Israel, was unable to do it. And now here at the height of Baal Peor, which is also a location, he caused Israel to sin. How? By getting the beautiful women to participate with the men. The Abrahamic covenant had stopped him from cursing people. But he worked out that they could curse themselves. And that's exactly what is happening here. And so this is the sin that will bring them about and bring them low. It is the plague that should have been struck to somebody else. But because of this, the generation that came out of Egypt would be wiped out. You see, 10 times they had murmured against the Lord, and many of that Exodus generation that was born in Egypt had already died, but some were still alive. And the last of that remnant is now about to die. And it's chilling to read through the census when we look at the first and the second census, how many people did not pass through. And here we have, in our text, we have the word zonat from zana, meaning harlotry, from the word harlot. And often it's used in its ordinary sense, the way you and I would use that. Well, I hope we don't, but you know what I mean. But the word is also used in a spiritual sense. In spiritual idolatry, is in Isaiah 57:3 and Jeremiah 2:20. And what we see here is that both are happening. They were using both the physical and the spiritual problem. Balaam's suggestion was now followed through to curse the people, but not with words, but with deeds. And so it's the counsel of Balaam that is now allowing the plague of the Lord to come against him. And he does this all for the sake of money. It's rather sad, isn't it? The Moabite women who were beautiful invited the Jewish man, come and witness. This is interesting. This is time to study us. Then you know who we are. We are fellow believers. We believe in Baal like you, meaning it in a generic sense, the Lord or the Master. But who was it that they worshipped? Chemos. Remember, Solomon even dedicated some shrines to him. And at the time of Jeremiah, we read that there were blood sacrifices. Children were offered to him. 2 Kings 3:27. His name means the destroyer, because he would destroy lives. But they didn't worship just one god, they worshipped a number of gods, because they bowed down to their gods. And so here the Baal of Peor is just one of the other gods that they worshipped, and probably Asherah, his wife, his consort. These were amongst the preeminent ones. And so they observed what they did. They enjoyed the fruits of what the pagans did. And then they participated with them. And that caused the Lord to be angry. So Israel joined themselves to the Baal of Peor, and the Lord was angry against Israel. The Lord said to Moses, "Take all the leaders of the people and execute them in broad daylight before the Lord, so that the fierce anger of the Lord may turn away from Israel." So Moses said to the judges of Israel, "Each of you slay his men who have joined themselves together to the Baal of Peor." Sounds a bit harsh, and this story is often not in children's Bible. Probably rightly so, but there is a lesson in here though. And it's clarified for us when we see the names of God, when we think of the names of God in this context. Because who is he? Well, he's the Holy One of Israel. As the Holy One, he wouldn't tolerate such idolatry that is happening here. He is the righteous judge, and as such, he will come and judge even the nation that he has chosen. Because with his judgment comes his righteousness, and he bestows that upon us if we follow him. And it is he who sanctifies us if we obey. And those are things that he cannot do. And so God, who's a jealous God or a zealous God, and the word is kanaiti, and so what you have is that God is jealous for his holiness. God is never jealous in a negative sense, but zealous. And so he is against what is happening here in a very literal sense. And because of that, the plague breaks out. He's dealing with their sins, because Baal was just a false god, a Canaanite god whom they worshipped, together with the fertility god. And we see that local god, the pagan god Baal, mentioned in various times and often connected with a place, as it is here. Peor is a place, but you see it at Baal Zephon or Baal Hermon in the north, or Hazor. These are just places where the name of Baal was connected to a location, because they believed that their god was a local god who had authority over a local realm. But God was the creator of heaven and the earth. Where can I flee to escape him? There's nowhere. If I go to Peor or to Hazor or to Australia or even New Zealand, God is still there. That's the reality wherever I am. And Israel here is saying, well, some in Israel at least, maybe God is okay with this because he's just a local deity who's just with us. But when we're in this territory, we can do something else. So Israel joined themselves to the worship of the god of Moab, the Baal of Peor, and God's anger is against the people. And particularly it says against the leaders. Why? This is that generation of the Exodus. They've now grown up. They're now at the end of their life. The JPS here, the Jewish Publication Society, has, and Moses is told to hang them up unto the Lord in the face of the sun. In other words, this was in broad daylight, but They were facing the sun, just hanging there, as a warning to all. We then meet my great-great-grandfather, which I'm very grateful for. And behold, one of the sons of Israel came and brought to his relations a Midianite woman in the sight of Moses and in the sight of all the congregation of the sons of Israel, while they were weeping at the doorway of the tent of meeting. Then Pinchas, or Phinehas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, saw it. He arose from the midst of the congregation and took a spear in his hand. And he went after the man of Israel into the tent and pierced both of them through, the man of Israel and the woman through the body, so that the plague on the sons of Israel was checked. I know that within your family tree, you probably don't have somebody like that who's so blatant in murdering. But that's what this is. But he did this for the holiness of God. It's uncomfortable for us to think about that, because normally when we hear about somebody being killed, we go, horrible, send that man to jail at least. But here, God uses Phinehas, to make sure that the leaders don't continue to die. Somebody brought this woman to somebody else, to a leader. So there is now a group of people involved. And a Midianite woman, she's not from Moab, she's not a local girl, but she's from one of the neighboring tribes who's there to support Moab in their fight against Israel. And they are blatant about their sin. Right in front of Moses, even though Moses had just executed the leaders. Right in front of the congregation of Israel. Even though they were told about holiness. And they did this right in the middle of the congregation of Israel. And I want you to understand how in quick succession this happens. This isn't like the time that they were in the wilderness, somewhere around the 40 years. No, this is all happening in quick succession. Balaam appears, and very quickly, one after the other, these events happen. And it was only yesterday that the leaders died, and now another leader stands up and goes, hey, I'm not of that old guard. I can get away with this. And he took a spear in his hand and went after the men of Israel into the tent and pierced both of them through. It implies that it was during their act that he pierced them through. And God, in response, checks the plague and stops the plague at that point. And those that died that day by the plague were 24,000. That's horrific. But it is the standard of holiness that God expects. And it's the standard of holiness that many play loose with. There's a problem in this text, and I've pointed out the reference of 1 Corinthians 10:8, because over there it says, anybody know? I didn't know, and I had to look it up. I made a comparison, and it was 23,000. So how does that work? One of them couldn't count, right? No, they both could count. Paul says 23,000 died in that one day. Moses gives the whole figure of those that died. But just that day alone, 23,000 died. If that's not a wake-up call, I don't know what would be. 1,000 of the leaders had died, and they had been strung up before the Lord in the face of the sun. And now another 23,000 died. Verse 10. And the Lord spoke to Moses, saying, Pinchas, the son of Eleazar, the son of Aaron the priest, has turned away my wrath from the sons of Israel, in that he was jealous with my jealousy among them, so that I did not destroy the sons of Israel in my jealousy. Therefore, say, behold, I give him a covenant of peace, and it shall be for him and his descendants after him a covenant of perpetual priesthood, because he was jealous for his God, and he made atonement for the sons of Israel. God rewards Pinchas with a covenant of peace. It's an odd thing, isn't it? To kill people and be given a covenant of peace. A covenant in which God promises a perpetual and everlasting priesthood. Because he was like God, zealous, jealous, and he made atonement. The blessing that he receives for his zeal was to turn away the wrath, and so more people lived because he stopped the plague. And secondly, a perpetual priesthood, a covenant of peace. In the book of Ezekiel, in chapter 37, that covenant is mentioned again. Ezekiel 37:24. My servant David will be king over them, and they will have one shepherd. And they will walk in my ordinances and keep my statutes and observe them. And they shall live on the land that I gave Jacob my servant, in which your fathers lived. And they will live on it, and they and their sons forever. And David my servant shall be their prince forever. And I will make a covenant of peace with them. It'll be an everlasting covenant with them. And I will place them and multiply them. And I will set my sanctuary in the midst of them forever. My dwelling place also will be with them. And I will be their God, and they shall be my people. And all the nations will know that I am the Lord, who sanctifies Israel, and my sanctuary is in the midst of them forever. Both these two passages relate to the new covenant. They have not been fulfilled, but they have been promised. Pinchas was only a high priest for a very short time, but he's promised an everlasting priesthood to him and his sons. It leaves us with a bit of a problem, doesn't it? Don't we have another priesthood? The order of Melchizedek. In the millennial kingdom, Yeshua will be both the high priest, but he will also be king. But he will be the King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. And so, looking from my perspective, what do I see above me? I see Pinchas. But above him, I see the great high priest in the order of Melchizedek. It's the same here in this passage where it's really clarified with David. David, from my perspective, will be king over Israel. But now look at it the other way around from the Lord. He will only be a local ruler. He will only be a prince. And so David in this passage is both called king and prince, because he is just a local ruler, while Yeshua will be King of Kings and Lord of Lords. And so here in this passage, we see that Pinchas will receive the priesthood, but not only him. From the book of Isaiah, we know that there will be also Gentile priests. And so the priesthood of Melchizedek is bigger, but it will include Pinchas' descendants. Not only that, one of the descendants of Pinchas was Zadok. Now, many of you will recognize that name, the sons of Zadok. And so you can see his genealogy in 1 Chronicles 6, verses 50 to 53, and Ezra 7, 1 to 6. And he too is promised a special place in the kingdom. We see that in the book of Ezekiel also, 40, 43, 44, 48. And I'll leave you to work out those references by yourself. But again, it is based on their zealousness, on their jealousness for what they have done for God. Well, then we come to who is the guilty party in this. And the guilty party is identified at the end of the chapter, verse 14. Now the name of the slain man of Israel, who was slain with the Midianite woman, was Zimri, the son of Salu, the leader of the father's household amongst the Simeonites. The name of the Midianite woman who was slain was Cosbi, the daughter of Zur, who was the head of the people of her father's household in Midian. These are two people who are leaders in Israel. Both of them are prince or princesses within their tribe. And particularly when you look at the tribe of Simeon in the next chapter, in chapter 26, you see that their numbers have dramatically been reduced. And it seems that they were behind what their prince Zimri did. That's why they were punished more severely. They went from 60,000 to nearly 22,000. Nearly a tribe gone. And the woman came from the Midianite tribe, and it's around the Gulf of Eilat on both sides at various times, and her name is Cosbi. Now, for those of you who remember my lessons on Jewish history, remember Bar Kokhba, who led the third Jewish revolt, who failed miserably? His name was changed from the son of the star to Bar Kosiba, the son of lies. And her name here has that same root. Both names mean deceiver. And so she was there to deceive him. And it may as well be a symbolic name given to her, but that's what she does here. And it's a rather sad thing that she participated in this. There are two passages in the New Covenant as I'm starting to wrap up. In 2 Peter, it's chapter 2, verse 15. I could write that in, but it's too late now. Where it mentions the way of Balaam. Forsaking the right way, they have gone astray, having followed the way of Balaam, the son of Beor, who loved the wages of unrighteousness. Balaam's way is a choice to promote falsehood for financial gain, thus creating wealth through sin. In Jude, chapter 1, there's only one chapter, verse 11, woe to them, for they have gone to the way of Cain, violence, particularly murder. And for pay they have rushed headlong into the error of Balaam. For pay they've rushed headlong into the error of Balaam. And they perished in the rebellion of Korah. Balaam's error, the way of Balaam, is their willingness to accommodate pagan beliefs so that you may profit out of them. In other words, putting money before righteousness. The way of Balaam, the error of Balaam, together shows a way of promoting sin for gain and accommodating pagan practices and beliefs for greed. This is something that God didn't stand for back in the book of Numbers, how much more so for us? God will bless us, but it might not be financially. God may bless us with health and wealth, but it may not be. We pray that he will. But we are commanded to stand up for truth, for righteousness, for goodness. That is what the body of Messiah ought to do. Why? Because then we will act like Pinchas did. And then we will see the Lord, our righteousness, the Lord who sanctifies us. So may we follow in his footsteps. Oh, Father, help us to stand up for righteousness and lead a life like Pinchas, zealous for the Lord. May we live sanctified lives for Messiah Yeshua. May we stand up for truth and righteousness and see the goodness of the Lord. I'm going to ask the worship team to come back and bring our final songs. Yes, straight after this. Straight after this.
Looking at the way this our timing has worked tonight, Paul, I think we're going to go back to Kiddush in the beginning.
Probably.
Yeah, because it works, you know, and I feel that's how we're used to it. And we'll
He's such a traditionalist, isn't he? And they complain when I put a tradition.
Listen, my family name hasn't got a Pinchas in it. Talking about, please grab your glasses.
They're downstairs. We're going to do this.
Yeah, we're doing it
together.
downstairs.
We'll
yeah.
do it now. So for those who are online,
yeah.
and if you're online, you can say it with us. And for those who are here with us, we'll do it again downstairs in a few minutes so we can do it together. But say it with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam,
Pray, free, Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. Amen. It's good that it says grape juice.
It is. Just leave it on there. Leave it on there.
Yep. Please just say this with us. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Blessed are you, O Lord our God, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. Amen.
And again, we will participate of this in a few seconds, but for those of you who are online, I hope you enjoyed that, and that was very tasty.
Can I just mention something else, please? This Sunday, Paul is speaking at Northridge Vineyard online. So if you look at the newsletter, you'll see all you need to do is just go to Northridge Vineyard, Morning Community, and you'll see a very important chapter of Hebrews, perhaps the most important one, 11. Yeah,
It's an important chapter. I'm not sure it's the most important chapter.
But he's been given the privilege to speak. Please enjoy listening to that online. And then, sorry,
tomorrow, if you are bored, Awake to Israel, we'll have an online message as well. It's on Israel's greatest rejection. And so I think it'll be different than what you're thinking of right now, but if you do want to see it, Awake to Israel, not sure if it's .org.au, but if you Google Awake to Israel Sydney, you'll pick it up.
Well, you're certainly in demand,
Yeah, at the moment.
which is well, that's what we'd like. Yeah, and then please, as I said in my WhatsApp earlier this morning, please can you all pray for our friend and I guess I'm not joking when I said one of the patriarchs of our group, Bernd, who lost his sister earlier today. Thank you, everybody, for joining us tonight. I trust that you'll all be here in a fortnight's time. Thank you for those that have come tonight. Shabbat Shalom, and may God bless you in the week to come. Amen.
Well, we'll close with the Aaronic benediction as we often do. That's the English. It's in the book of Numbers, chapter 6, and technically it was given to Aaron and his sons, so Pinchas, who we read about today. But under the new covenant, in the priesthood of Melchizedek, we are free to say this all. So Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha, Ya'ir Adonai panav elecha v'chunecha, Yasa Adonai panav elecha, v'yasem lecha shalom.
The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord lift up your countenance on you and give you peace.
In the name of our Messiah Yeshua, amen.
Amen.
Thank you all for watching us online, and we pray that you will join us again next time, either here, there, or in the air. Till then, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you again, Sri.
Thank you, Sri. Much appreciated. Well, that's it. Now we'll leave that standing for a minute, and then
Go
Sri will
downstairs,
shut it
please.
down, and we'll all be good. Next time we'll need to have some extra jokes.
Now we're off the air. Rick was quite telling to me last week not to blow the candles out, saying, be aware of it, it's not a birthday.
So how do you extinguish it?
You don't.
Yeah.